You're listening to Bigfoot Society, and I'm Jeremiah Byron. Today we have the pleasure of having Brian Sawyer back on the show for part 2 of his interview. Brian Sawyer just wanted to document Bigfoot sightings, but what he found along Michigan's lakes, woods, and back roads defied reality. Voices in the night, something scratching at his window when he thought he was alone. This is the continuing story of Brian Sawyer, so stay with us. All right, Bigfoot Society, you've got the privilege of having Brian Sawyer back on. You may have heard the first episode I had with Brian where he was sharing about his journey he's had so far through having his Bigfoots of Michigan YouTube channel and the really, really interesting things that have happened. In fact, we had to put it into a two-parter, which is why Brian is back today. And I said this in the first episode, but if you ever want to have a great case study of what can happen when you start getting into the Bigfoot field, Brian's story is an amazing case study of what can happen. But Brian, I'm so glad to have you back on the show today. We kind of left on a cliffhanger where your journey was about to get into some potentially weird stuff. So welcome to the show, man.
Man, thanks for having me back on. Yeah, it's been a crazy ride. You know, when I started this thing, I probably said this before, I was hoping to get 2 seasons out of it. You know, we're doing a TV pilot series. We just recently started the podcast show. So in the back of my mind, I'm like, okay, if I can tell the studio people that I can get 2 years out of this, then maybe we can build off of that. I had no idea what I was getting into. And to be honest with you, I really didn't expect to have any sightings or encounters myself, let alone this crazy, I don't even know how you want to label it because there are so many different narratives to this. Crazy interdimensional is what I would call them, encounters as well. One of the things I've been doing for the show is we decided to go in, we had kind of looked at finding Bigfoot, what's going on now with Expedition Bigfoot. And we said, okay, we want to go crazy with this. We want to be outlandish with this because here's the tough part. And a lot of people might be insulted by this, but I mean no insult by this. When it comes down to it, to the general population, this is just entertainment. But to those who have had the actual encounters, this is life-changing events. It was for me. Going back just a little bit of history of me. Sure, I'm a kid growing up through my teens and all that kind of stuff. I got a Christian background. So, of course, I have all the dreams about demons and, the devil visiting me and all that kind of stuff. And then I moved to Port Huron, Michigan. So mark that down. Write that down right now. Everybody listening. Very important. Port Huron, Michigan. Now, as I learned, I do believe that there are different areas that are more energized, I guess you could say. We've heard about ley lines. You've got all the different monuments around the world. If you watch all the ancient alien shows, So there are points throughout the earth where we think maybe these things connect. There could be ancient aliens, all this kind of stuff. But for me, when I moved to Port Huron, Michigan, things exploded. I was getting visited. I'd be laying down on my bed and a black cloak figure would show up. And at first you go, well, that's just a dream and all this kind of stuff. Well, no, it gets into the realm where I'm awake now and this cloaked figure is visiting me. And, I'm doing the whole Christian thing. In the name of Jesus, get out of here. And then I moved from my first location and I build a house. So I kind of contributed, well, it's an old neighborhood. That's an old house. They're just living there. And then I'm going to move out of that situation. Well, I build a new house and this thing follows me. And I got to be honest, I'm like, what the heck is this? I've never had, we've all had the out of the corner of our eye experiences, but I'm like, what the heck? This thing has followed me to a brand new construction house. And then the one time I was laying on my bed, it came in and hit me in the chest where I felt it. And there seemed to be, whether you believe in Christianity or that whole narrative, and everybody's got to make their own decisions when it comes to religion and all of these paranormal type occurrences. Well, this thing came around the bed, hit me in the chest, and then like a white type of cloak figure tackled it. So that was my first big experience. And I'm like, man, this is a weird area, I think. So I'm starting to formulate all this stuff. Well, then my father passes away. And just north of Port Huron, northwest, there's a little town in the middle of nowhere called Sandusky, Michigan. So I moved here, and I've been here for 5 years. And I'm setting all this up because I want to reiterate that I do believe there are geographical locations that are more energized. So I move into my dad's house. My sister and my brother and I, we're all just kind of formulating what to do with my dad's estate. And I'm like, well, tell you what, I'll move in here. I'll fix it up, get everything back to normal, and then we can sell this if we want to. So one evening, I'm laying on my bed. Now, this is not a dream sequence. I am not in between the land of awake and asleep. There's that little kind of gray area where people see things and have visions. No, man, I am fully awake. I'm laying on my bed and I'm thinking, in my mind, speeding. I'm thinking about I'm dumping a ton of money in my dad's old house that is basically almost condemned condition. And I'm laying there, and my eyes are closed, and I'm thinking, I got to do this. I got to get a new roof. Man, I got to fix those gutters. I just got stuff Rolodexing through my brain. And just as I'm starting to slow down, well, I'll tackle this and that tomorrow, I hear a voice, Jeremiah. And this voice says, I've heard about you. And I'm laying there, and I'm like, wait a minute, I'm pretty sure I'm in the house by myself. And it was kind of a female tone voice. And so I'm like, who the heck is that? So I open my eyes and I see a fairy hovering over my face about a foot away. And it's directly over my face, and it's about the size of my hand. And if you've ever talked to a dog, you know how they cock their head left and right, and they're looking at you and they're studying you, trying to understand what you're saying. Well, this fairy is intently looking at me. Its head's moving from side to side, back and forth. It's really studying me. And it's studying me so much that it doesn't realize that I have now opened my eyes and I'm watching it. And out of my mouth, unexpectedly, just comes out, I say, I can see you, right? And this thing is in total shock and gives a big, and flies across the room and right into whatever you want to call it, a conjunction box or whatever. You feed your DVD player into it, you feed the cable into it, and then that routes it to the TV. So this thing flies right into this box with a pop and sparks. And I'm laying there going, what the heck did I just see? And what's so crazy about this is I'm not a guy who watches Peter Pan. I don't have daughters. I didn't grow up watching this stuff. I wasn't a big Disney fan. I've got 2 sons. So we're more of the man type and work and, getting your hands dirty and all that kind of stuff. And so the last thing that would have been on my radar is what I would call a fairy. So now I've got a cloak figure that's punched me in the chest back in Port Huron. I'm in Sandusky, Michigan. Now, granted, the house was vacant for a couple of years. But does that justify a fairy floating over my face? So my mind is blown, and it takes me a good 2-3 weeks to come out of this. And of course, I'm not telling people because you don't, even now, UFOs and Bigfoots, the stigma isn't as heavy as it used to be. But now you throw in a different variable, a different dynamic. Fairies? Yeah, okay. After that, I studied up on them, and it's an old, Celtic legend and all of that. But fairies, the size of my hand, kind of like a Tinkerbell type figure. It had an alien type looking face, but it was definitely female. The voice was female, and it looked feminine. So that happened. So my mind is blown. I'm not telling anybody for a couple of weeks, and then a series of events happen. Right around there, the Cass River sighting happens, and so I go check that out. And then Aaron Young contacts me, and we've talked about all this. And I get into, all right, we're going to do this TV pilot series. But like I said in the beginning, I had no idea. I was hoping for 2 seasons. And so I had to talk to the studios and say, look, I can give you 5 seasons right now. And I told them a couple of the stories, and it just blew their minds. So this all leads into the interdimensional side of things. We've got one of my jobs is to kind of break it down. Okay, what are the different categories that Bigfoot or people with all of the eyewitnesses we're talking to that Sasquatch, Bigfoot falls into? There's so many other names, Hairy Man. This weekend, I go to Blue Creek, Ohio. Had to get permission by the Shawnee Indians through Donna Copus, one of my eyewitnesses. We're going down there. I hopefully get to see this big black Sasquatch who, off the top of Donna's head, believes to be at least 150 years old, because I believe there was contact with her grandfather, and then she says this thing was attached to her father. It's like a friendship relationship, and this thing is still alive now, and she's getting up in age, and she even has another Sasquatch that is attached to her. So, and she refers to these things as the Watchers. So we've got the Watchers. We've got, the good old fashioned, which has been the main narrative up to this point, the Gigantopithecus. And then talking with a friend of mine, Aaron Spencer, they could be an ancient human tribe or an ancient human Indian tribe that branched off. Then, I've got an eyewitness in Grand Rapids who's been told by his relationship with a certain clan out there that they are the Star People. And they turn from orbs into Sasquatch and back into orbs. Then, what's so crazy about this is even a couple, I would say, of my hardcore friends who believe that these were the Nephilim, and that's a whole nother narrative. They're even starting to lean towards the possible Star People and miners of the earth. They're either the Star People or they're dropped off by the Star People to mine the earth for the minerals that the ancient aliens need. So that's a narrative. And then also Donna Copus, I'm real excited to go about this weekend, does believe that they are of the Star People. So my job is to respect all of that, is to bring this, like I said before, into an entertainment realm, but yet still respect the eyewitnesses one by one. So for me as a Christian, this has caused me to totally just go, okay, as a Christian, how do I justify this? So then you read verses like Revelation 6:8 about the pale horse, and its rider's name was Death. And he is given authority to kill by the sword, by famine, by plague, and by wild beasts. Now, the ancient Greek is therion for that, and that interprets into wild beasts. So part of the Christian narrative is that, okay, part of the judgment is, God's going to let this Death, this pale horse rider, unleash certain judgments upon mankind and kill off, I believe it's like 2/3 of the human population. And one of those tools to kill off 2/3 of the human population will be wild beast. So guys like L.A. Marzulli believe this narrative. And it's not specific. So sure, it could be a wolf, it could be a lion, but is it also these things? And then that goes to, there's another verse that connects to all that, Luke 21:11, where it says, in the last days, Jesus is talking, and he's breaking it down, and he says, in the last days, you will see fearful sights and basically signs from the heavens. I'm kind of paraphrasing it. But the fearful sights in the original Greek is the word phobatron, and that actually means monsters. All right? So if we just insert that, Jesus says in the last days you will see monsters. And of course it goes on to talk about things coming down from the heavens, which is apo, and that means something that will descend from the sky, and Uranus from the heavens, so to speak. So basically Jesus is saying, in my interpretation now with all that I've been learning, is in the last days, two of the signs that you will see, knowing that it's the last days, is you will see monsters and you will see UFOs coming down from the heavens. So this is my job, to put this all together, to go out, to get all these different narratives, and to interview the eyewitnesses. Well, I come upon a gal named Angie Elizabeth. So, and also Tammy Krasick has been very helpful. Tammy's wonderful, and I got to get back with her. Want to get her on the show. Angie Elizabeth and Tammy Krasick and Matthew Sexton, who we've talked about before, have brought in the narrative that, hey, these things are interdimensional. They can mind speak. Now, all right, so let's jump into that right now, because in the back of my mind, being a practical man, I'm like, mind speak? Oh, come on. And this is just me thinking to myself. I'm not criticizing them, but this is new. I haven't been involved in this subject, until the last 3 years heavily. And so I'm, okay, mind speak. And okay, with Matthew Sexton, they're opening up portals. They're going in and out. Matthew has a great story about walking into a portal, immediately getting sick. He wasn't sure if it was the effects of the portal or the infrasound, so he backed out of there. And then Angie Elizabeth. Angie Elizabeth, oh my goodness. She's got them living on her property. So she's a medium type, psychic type of person. And there are these people who are just more in touch with what I would call the other side. So I go over to meet Angie Elizabeth, and she's explaining her encounters. And she asked these creatures, this whole family, she's got a whole family of 3 Sasquatch, actually 4 Sasquatch. The daughter moved from Angie's land across the street. So there's another hint that these Sasquatch stay together in family clans. But Angie starts communicating with these things. They initiate it because she's new in the house. It seemed to be that they didn't like the former owner, former residents of this house. And Angie picks up, as she hears sounds. And she starts hearing mind speak. And one of them say, "Stupid human." And Angie's like, "Hey, I can hear you." And the thing's like, "What? You're one of the humans who can hear us?" So he's like, "Well, what do you want?" So she's like, "Well, I'd really like to see you. I've heard the sounds around my house." So there are physical sounds going on. I believe the first one was like this large kind of train whistle that came from across the street. And what's neat about Angie, let me insert this, is she is an urban Bigfoot eyewitness. These Bigfoot are living just outside, not far outside of Detroit, everybody. So these things are everywhere. To me, the key aspects are water and food. Here in Michigan, we just have a ton of deer, so they love it. But her first encounter, she hears a whistle, like a train whistle, coming from across the street and by the side of her house and in the back. And then she's hearing sounds, other sounds. She's picking up on very strong smells coming out of her garage. And then she gets picture of footprints. Okay. and she has the mind speak incident, and this thing lets her see him. And he steps out on the side of the road, and she's able to get a good view of him. And he walks down the side of the road. And this is in the Macomb County area of Michigan, so just north of Detroit. And this thing walks on the side of the road and then back into the woods. So she's finally seen one, but the communication starts to pick up from there. And a terrible situation. So she's got a nice Bigfoot family living on her property. She also says there's a Dogman, which is a nice Dogman. I want to elaborate more on that. And she has names for all of these things. One, the child Bigfoot, she's named Olaf, and he will watch TV through her window. She'll leave a TV on in one of her bedrooms, and this small Sasquatch well, he's getting bigger now, will watch her TV through the window. So she has a full-on relationship with the Sasquatch family, and she's seen them more than once now. But she had an encounter. So this is where we come in. This is the big argument in the Sasquatch world is, all right, are they all good or are they all bad? Are they like humans, some good, some bad? And that's kind of what I'm settling into. The some are good, some are bad. Well, she has an encounter, so she's getting along great with this Sasquatch family. They're letting her see her, and she's got all the evidence, footprints. You can see that in our episodes on our YouTube channel. But one night, she has an encounter, a mind speak encounter, and she hears a voice, and it's speaking to her and telling her that it's an elder Sasquatch. All right. So kind of like Indian tribes think that how the elders are really revered and all of that. So she hears this elder Sasquatch speaking, and he starts saying this over and over. Come outside. I'm hungry. And she's like, where's Naboo? Naboo, I believe, is the correct name for the Sasquatch family male that she has a great relationship. And this elder Sasquatch says, well, he can't hear you. I'm an elder Sasquatch, so I'm blocking him. Come outside. I'm hungry. So she's like, well, I only feed, my friends on the holidays. She's made an agreement to feed her family on the holidays, so she'll gift them and all that kind of stuff. And she says, well, I've only agreed to feed them on the holidays. No, you guys know how to forage. You can feed yourselves better than I can feed you. And he says, come outside. I'm hungry. And she's starting to kind of get what's going on. And she goes, wait a minute. Have you ever tasted human flesh? And this elder Sasquatch responds, yes. Come outside. I'm hungry. And so she is very fearful. She's like, no, I'm not. No way. I'm not coming outside. No way. So this thing leaves. Okay. And Angie is one of the most wonderful people I've ever met in my life. Gentle spirit, very kind, doesn't want to hurt anybody. No ulterior motives. She just is who she is. So she is devastated. It kind of registers to her that, wow, not all of these creatures or these beings are our friends. Well, after that, other Sasquatch come and visit her house and tell her that they will protect her from this one individual who wanted to eat her, basically. So that is my first, so I've got the Matthew section, walking to a portal. He's telling me, yeah, I believe they're interdimensional, all this kind of stuff. So that was easing me into it. Angie Elizabeth is dunking me under the water. And I'm like, what? Okay. All right. This is going to make for great TV. I'm going with it. So one thing leads to another. And then I start having occurrences myself. I get invited to a private property. I might have mentioned this before. I'm not allowed to say where this location is. What I can say is it's along the Lake Huron shoreline, up by the thumb of Michigan. So that's a lot of water. I have to be vague about it because the owner of this land is a government official, and he does not want to be associated with any narrative having to do with Bigfoot. He doesn't want his superiors to know that he believes in Bigfoot. And what is so crazy about this is every member of his human family, there's 4 people, have seen their own Sasquatches. So, and they figure what they've seen is anywhere between 2 and 4 different Sasquatches. So I get out there and I start taking a look around, and one of the pictures is in the episode. There's orbs on their property. There's footprints that appear and reappear. What's crazy about it is when we talk interdimensional, it's like these things are able to stay outside of our dimension, but then they come to our dimension to eat, to drink, to do whatever. And so I went back into this property and I found these little huts, and it was almost like a house. Each Sasquatch has kind of their own little area. Like, our families, you go into the house, everybody's got their own bedroom, their own little areas, workstations, whatever. And this is how this property is laid out. So after doing more digging, I realized it's an old apple orchard. It's berries and nuts, multiple deer. This is very important, there is a natural spring-fed pond. So one of the things I've learned about is the cleaner the water, the better for these individuals. High-flowing rivers, not too much like the swampy. Maybe they're there, but it's probably there to find food. But they're not going to be drinking the water. They're looking for the freshest water they can find. So I get out there, and my girlfriend's hearing grunts. I finally hear a grunt, and I've got the tripod and camera in my hand. And I set this sucker down real quick, and I do a 180 pan with the camera. And you can see this picture in one of our episodes. I think it's episode 11. And that episode is called The Watchers Among the Trees. And I get a picture of a Sasquatch peeking out from behind a tree. And I believe this Sasquatch's name is Scout. And I'll tell you why. Because right after this incident, I start getting visitations at my house. Okay. The first one upset me because I wasn't home. So there's an old saying when it comes to Sasquatch. If you go into their territory and you're looking for them and trying to check them out, they're going to follow you home and come to your area, your house, and check you out. Did I believe that when I was first told? Not really. I think it was Scott Carpenter. He's since passed away. That was the first time I heard it. It was from one of Scott Carpenter's videos. So I'm at work the first night I'm at work, and the girlfriend calls me and she's like, "Hey, I'm hearing banging on our camper. I've got house, and I've got like a side lot, so to speak, and we've got our camper there." And she calls me and she's like, "Hey, I'm hearing the bangs on the camper." So she goes out there, she gets her gun, she goes out there and she takes a look around. Everything falls silent. So then I'm like starting to remember, okay, maybe something's going on here. We go down to the West Virginia Bigfoot Museum, and we also visit the Mothman Museum. And then what coincides with that is I catch something on my security cameras when I'm not there again, okay? And Jeremiah, I have tried and tried to analyze this video and figure out what this thing is. I have all the other videos. I've got deer walking through my yard, possums, raccoons, anything you can imagine, stray dogs, coyotes, whatever. At one time or another, if it's an animal, it's been walking through my yard and it's been caught on cameras. Well, I catch this spider. And we've now, if you're interested in Bigfoot and Sasquatch, you have heard about the spider crawl. And there's this thing that quickly, and it looks like basically I have a camera trap system. If you get away from one camera, you're going to get caught on the next camera. So if you're approaching my house, you're going to get caught sooner or later. So it looks like this thing is evading the first camera, and then the second camera captures the tail end of this thing. It's only about a second long. And this thing is like a spider crawling, and it's huge. I saw that. That was, I think, because I've been very analytical doing this whole TV pilot series. My concern has always been is when I finally do see a Bigfoot, 5 feet from me, I'm going to be asking him to move a little bit more to the left because the light's not good. But when I saw this thing, and I haven't released that video yet because there is enough criticism in this industry. And so it takes me a while to process things, whether it be the ferry or this thing caught on my camera. I have to be settled in my own mind, soul, and spirit before I release it. And so I'm ready for the backlash. And in anything I do, you don't want to be construed as crazy either in this business when you're trying to do a TV show. So you don't want to be let the crazy take you over. But I just see this thing on my camera, and I'm going to release it sometime. But it's doing the spider crawl, and it's so fast. And this one almost looked like it had a tail, too. And so that freaks me out. All right? So we've got the banging on the camper. We've got the spider crawl, both when I'm not there. So I had heard, hey, you can ask these things what their name is. You can speak to them, not to say you'll get a reply. Give it a try. So I go back out to where I got the picture of Scout. And I'm like, hey, what's your name? I don't know if you're the one visiting my house or not. If you have a name, please let me know. So I gift him some more. I'd left carrots before, apples, all that kind of stuff. Well, then finally, right after that, I'm at home. Like this is just a line of events, all coupled together. So I'm laying in my bed. My girlfriend and I were laying there, and I've got the window cracked about half open, and I'm fully awake, and I start hearing. Oh, and one of the things when I said, hey, what's your name? And I said, please don't bang on the camper anymore, and please don't bang on the house because it's so old. So I'm like, okay, well, at least I communicated to them this. I don't know if I'll ever hear anything. I don't even know if those things are a Bigfoot. Your mind doubts yourself. Well, then I'm laying in bed, the window's cracked, and I start hearing a light scratching on my windowsill just above my head. And it gets thicker and thicker. So I'm like, well, here it is. I asked them to not, to come when I'm home, to not bang on stuff. And I'm hearing the scratching. But then I'm like, okay, wait, you're nuts. It could be a bird. It could be a bat. It could be whatever. And then, Jeremiah, I hear this freaking growl purr. So it wasn't mean, but it was letting me know it was there. And it is this thick. It really is. They really are like a low tiger infrasound type of thing. And it's growling. And when I hear the window still scratching, I say, I hear you. And as soon as I say that, I hear the growling. And I'm like, I hear you. Thank you for being nice. And it moves away and it's gone. All right. So I'm freaking. I'm like, all right, that could have been it. I'm still not sure. I'm still doubting myself. I still can't let the crazy take me over. And then the next incident happens. Normal night, not too long after this, I've kind of settled down. I'm happy. I'm normal. It's turning into night. You know, I'm interacting with my girlfriend and my son, and hey, I'm going to take the garbage out. Now, you've got to walk out my back door, and then you've got to walk. I have a detached garage. You got to walk behind the garage to find the garbage can. So I wrap up the garbage. I literally come out the back door and got it over my shoulder, and dope-de-dope-de-do, normal, everyday frickin' life. And I hear it. I hear what I would call my one and only mind speak incident. Now, I didn't necessarily believe in it. I'm like, well, I have to respect my eyewitnesses. Anything could be possible. But then I freaking hear it. And I hear a very monotone voice, very powerful. Now, I'm in the light of the porch light, so maybe the thing was there. But then I went and looked. So it's not, no, I walked the whole property line and I couldn't find anything. But anyways, I'm walking out and I've got the garbage over my shoulder and I hear this very monotone voice say, "Thanks for friendship, Scout." And I always joke about this because it wasn't some Englishman talking, saying, "Oh, Brian, thank you so much for your communication and all that you've done for us, being nice and gifting us and all of this, and cheerio, old chap." It was nothing like that. It was broken a little bit. Not "thank you for your friendship," but "thanks for friendship, Scout." And I knew it was thanking me for the gifting it had done, the interaction I'd had, and it was telling me its name was Scout. So I believe the picture we have in our episode 11 of season 2 is Scout. He's the only one that's let me see him. Well, there was another one. We'll get to that. So my mind is blown. When I hear the voice, I spin around and I'm looking for it. Drop the garbage. You know, I'm walking property line looking for it. I don't see anything. So I do attribute that to being my mind speak incident. So then I get a hold of Matthew Sexton. I'm like, "Hey, man, you know, got mind speak. I want to go out, you know, where the Black River Bigfoots are is what we call them." And so we get out there and we're doing an overnight. And I think I mentioned this in the first episode. When I heard that Sasquatch speak, and it's just like Neff from Sasquatch, Ontario. Just so low, and we believe it might have been saying "thank you for taking the apple" and all of that. So then the next incident, I get out to this private land again. I've been out there a couple times, but now I'm doing an overnight. And I'm up all night. I work midnight, so it's no problem for me to be up all night. But like Matthew Sexton, he passed out when I heard the Sasquatch talk. I get to this property and the guy's out there, and you know, it doesn't take him but a couple of hours and he passes out. And there is the witching hour, without a doubt. And when these things move into an area, the air changes. There is a presence about it. So he passes out. We're in the tent. I'm laying there and I hear, and the tent is right next to the natural spring fed pond. And I hear a big splash. And I'm like, well, that was too big to be a goose. You know, the biggest things we have landing in the water here in Michigan are gooses and the herons and all of that. Here in the Thumb, you know, we've been hard pressed to have any kind of black bear sighting or cougar sighting. Yes, there have been rare sightings, but years ago, I hear a big splash, and I'm like, well, I'm going to get out there and I'm going to take a look around. I've got my new thermal imager video camera, and I'm going to get out there and I'm going to use that thing. I'm going to do what I said I was going to do. This is why I'm here, right? So I get out, I've got my headlamp on, taking a piss, and then I start messing with the thermal imager, and I'm like, okay, I got to learn how to use this better. And I take the thermal imager and I got it on video recording, and I'm looking at the pond, and I can't really see anything in the pond. And then I pan. So let's say the pond is 12 o'clock on a clock. Well, I pan to my right at about 2 or 3 o'clock, and I see something. So I'm all right. I gotta practice with this thermal imager, video machine, whatever. And I'm focusing in and I'm focusing out. And finally, I realize it's deer. Now I'm going back and forth from the pond to see what initially made that big, huge splash, and back to the deer. So 12 o'clock to 2 o'clock, 12 o'clock to 2 o'clock. And I'm just going back and forth. And I kind of dial in the focus a little bit. And I'm like, yes, that is 2, maybe 3 deer over there. And once I kind of settled that in my brain, I spin around. I do a 180. Now, I hadn't done that. I had 12 o'clock and 2 o'clock. And so suddenly I shoot to 10, 3 o'clock. And I catch this thing. At first, I was unsure what the heck it was. I could see the back of something, and it's moving through the field. Now, I didn't include this part of the video. A lot of times, if people want to rip you off, they'll steal stuff and claim it for their own in this whole Bigfoot world thing. So what I try to do is if I have one footprint, a lot of times there's 2 footprints, but I'm only showing one of the footprints. So in this video, I only show part of it in that episode. I didn't show what I thought could have been a Bigfoot spider crawling, because I'm really kind of unsure at this point. Well, then it disappears behind, I don't know, I call it a tree bush. I'm a city boy. So I am still learning about the outdoors. Some of these guys are going, oh, that's a cedar tree and that's a oak, and they've been out in the woods their whole lives. Me, I'm learning. So there's some kind of tree bush there, but it's very thick. And this thing that is maybe crawling, heck, it could have been a deer's back. I don't know. I'm at this moment, I'm not sold on anything. It disappears behind this big tree bush. But when it comes out the other side, it has stood up already. It's standing and walking out from behind this tree bush. And these are the moments when you go, oh, what the, your mind spikes and your current reality changes. And what used to be fantasy or myth comes into reality. And this thing steps out 1 or 2 feet, and it's very quick, and it immediately does about face and walks back in. Now, I'm freaking. I'm like, okay, wait a minute. What the heck was that? That looked like a bipedal creature. And it's gone. I take a couple of steps in that direction to kind of look, and I don't see anything. And I'm like, why the heck did it turn around? Why did it leave? My mind's going, shoot, I needed more footage, all this kind of stuff. And then I realized, like an idiot, I still had my headlamp on. So I formulate that I'm not saying this thing couldn't see me. It probably saw me. And maybe it was the original thing that jumped in the pond. And I had my headlamp on at the time. But then I start focusing on the deer. And I now believe that this was a Sasquatch that worked its way around and was coming up behind me, not necessarily to attack me, but was coming up behind me to check me out. But like an idiot, I had my headlamp on, and once he saw that I was looking in his direction, he did an about face and turn around. So then people say, well, how do you know that was a Sasquatch? Well, because we measured it the next morning, and the branch where the head was at is 8 to 9 feet tall. So I am like, holy crap. everything that these people are telling me about their property is true. I've got the picture of the orb. Right after we gifted them, I had left, and then a couple of days later, we got a picture of one, or the landowner. Let me be clear about this. The landowner got a picture of one standing in the trees. You can see its face. That's in the episode as well, watching her. And it was a day after I gifted a pile of carrots in. The landowner, let me go back real quick. The landowner originally started seeing these beings is because they had a meat rabbit farm, and they were piling the innards and the skins out in one particular pile. And one day that pile was gone, and suddenly Sasquatch started showing up. So they stopped doing that. Well, when they started showing themselves again, I had gifted a whole pile of carrots and left them in their huts and all this kind of stuff. So then we get the picture from the landowner of the one watching from the trees, but then also there's a quick little video of a Sasquatch in the distance slamming down a big stick that the landowner got as well. And then on top of it, I have heard the audio. So right now, think about Sierra Sounds. Think about Sasquatch, Ontario, Neff. In that, the landowner brings to me what he has audio of 2 or 3 Sasquatch on this private property talking. And it is very similar to the Sierra Sounds. It is very similar to Neff and the lowness of what I had heard from the Black River Bigfoot. But then what's neat about this audio is the landowner is sitting on his deck when he's doing this, and you can hear him going, talking back and forth. And then they do some whooping, and the landowner does a whoop. Well, the Sasquatch immediately responds to the landowner the first time. When the landowner whoops again the second time, you can tell that the Sasquatch realize that that's not one of them, and their whole tone changes. They're like, they do the whoops, and then it's like, they get upset. They're saying back to this landowner, hey, knock it off. We realize that you're not one of us. And that is, next to the Sierra Sounds and Neff singing, that's the freakiest thing I've ever heard. And then, of course, when I heard the one speak. So we've got these things, and they are interdimensional beings. I'm kind of settling in on that. And those are my encounters up to this point. And now I'm going to Blue Creek, Ohio, Shawnee Indians, Donna Copus, and she says she mind speaks with them. I'm going to go through a Shawnee type ceremony. Had to get permission to be there through Donna. And she says that like she'll be able to touch me, and she says she can see them, and she'll be able to touch me, and then I'll be able to see them. So when we get there, we're excited to find that out. So there's too much information out there that says that these things are interdimensional. Are they the star people? Me, with my Christian background, I try to be faithful to my upbringing, and I lean towards the Nephilim. They're generations down the line. Fallen angels came, they got it on with the earthly women, they spawned the Nephilim, and now these beings could be, Melba Ketchum did that DNA study, that it was a human mother and an unknown father. So when I think about things, I think about if you go to Google and you punch in, hey, how many different types of insects there are? There are, when I looked at it, it was 900,000 to 3 million different types of insects. So if you throw that in the mix, if you throw in even like, let's say the feline or the canine type animals that have so many different variations, and even us human, from black, white, Asians, all of that, I do believe that some of these could be interdimensional beings. But I also believe that, hey, maybe some are more diluted. Maybe they lost their powers over time. Maybe some are more gigantopithecus, because there's definitely a biological aspect where they leave physical evidence, of their own choosing, it seems, and they seem to do that only to certain individuals who, quote unquote, might have the sight. So I tend to think that there are just different levels of abilities with all these different types of Sasquatches. And here in the thumb of Michigan alone, I have accounts from eyewitnesses of every different color of Sasquatch. Here in Michigan, we have seen, we've got reports of ones that look like orangutans. But then, the Upper Peninsula account of this pastor driving down the road where he sees the one feeding on a deer carcass, and it looks up and it's got the face of a man. And then Sean Pettit from Oklahoma, he says his was just a giant man. And yes, it had some hair, some brown hair, but it was built like Arnold. And then I got the guy down the street here who saw the 14-footer, and he said it was more of a LeBron James or lanky, tall type of creature. And then that led to the next encounter, which was at the petroglyphs. I've got one wooing and responding. And since then, this sounds crazy. But I will find, and it started with Angie Elizabeth. There is a gifting and retrieval type relationship with Angie Elizabeth and these creatures, which is now kind of pressed on to me. When I go into, and like I always say, you just can't walk into the woods and find Sasquatch. You got to go to the locations where they're at, where they commute back and forth, maybe even migrate. But now when I go to a location, I will be gifted from the Sasquatch. This is crazy stuff. I know, Jeremiah. I will be gifted what's called a Y stick. And yes, people, oh, that's just a branch. Look. I come out of my tent and I find a Y branch stuck into the ground. I walk down a trail, and then 2 minutes later, I'm walking back, and there's a Y stick propped right in the middle of the path. I go to the petroglyphs, and I hear a woo right in front of me, and I see a Y stick that was dragged, and the trail dragged from the river and set nicely on the bank. It's crazy. So now I believe every so often I get gifted from these creatures because I've been friendly to them, because I show respect to them. I will get gifted Y sticks, and I've got 2 or 3 of them here in my podcast studio right now. So what do I believe, Jeremiah? It comes back to, I don't know, and no one knows, and there are no experts in this field. What we know is that there are multiple different types of beings or creatures with different capabilities and different levels. Like I said, think about insects or tigers or felines or cats or dogs. Some can be more like Gigantopithecus. Others, they might be their own species for all we know. Are they part of the Nephilim bloodline? Are they the star people? We don't exactly know what they are. I do lean towards that some are good, some are bad. But now we're ramping up for season 3. Oh gosh, you got time for one more story? Sherry Redu, great woman. Here's another non-believer. And I love these because they are people who are not expecting anything. They are people going through their normal daily lives and doing their normal daily thing, and then an encounter happens. Sherry Redu, who's the first episode of our season 2 on our YouTube channel, ran into a huge Sasquatch who left a footprint that's in the episode. But he mind spoke to her, long story short, that he was the guardian and keeper of the children of the forest. She didn't know what that meant. We do a first part episode. After that, this thing starts visiting her house. And then Sherry finds a graveyard of American Indian children who contracted some disease from some missionaries that had come into Michigan. So this thing had mind spoke to her, referencing that he was a guardian and keeper of the children of the forest. Now, these children, these Native American children, had died, 100 years ago. You know, and so it's like, oh my goodness, the narrative that these things live anywhere from 50 to 300. Now somebody just told me 500 years, they think. And that goes back to grandfathers and fathers and then children seeing the same Sasquatch, multiple generations. So everyone has to decide what they want to believe Bigfoot or Sasquatch is. And I'm here to tell you, there's multiple different kinds, multiple different, they're their own species, but multiple different kinds of that species with multiple different abilities, with a hierarchy of elders. And then, they have the biological fact where they fight. Alpha males fight one another. We've got a story which is only a year old here in Michigan and the UP. Long story short, a guy took some shots at a Sasquatch clan and ended up being killed for it, So, yeah, my opinion, you don't go out in the woods and try to shoot one of these things because you're gonna lose every time. More than likely, they are going to move away from you. They love watching us, just like we watch them. Multiple sightings from playgrounds where the Bigfoot will stand in the trees and watch the kids on the playgrounds. But then you've got the darker side, the 411 mysteries and all of that. So that's a lot of my story, which is ongoing. I don't think if I had the fairy sighting blew my mind. Like I could ease into the Sasquatch, but then when the mind speak happened, that took it to another level. Hearing one speak, and then what I believe the one sneaking up behind me on the thermal. But the fairy one blew my mind, that I need to be careful of what I think I know and just kind of take things as they come.
Oh, Brian, this is also a really good case study of the whole thing together. What will happen, guys, if you get into it? More, just the stories I hear are very, very similar. Brian, has it gotten to a point where you try to shut it down because it goes too far? Because sometimes that can come up.
Yeah. Okay. So let's get into the Christian realm. Everybody's got to decide if they want to be a Christian or not, or follow the hierarchy. This is where my religion, my personal relationship with Jesus Christ comes into play. When it got a little bit overwhelming at the house, I did say, "Hey, look, guys, I'm concerned. So in the name of Jesus, if you're not of the Lord, don't come around anymore." I haven't had encounters at the house since then. But since then, I did hear the Bigfoot speak. I did catch the one on thermal. I can't say they're all demonic. I can't go into that realm. And I don't want to label that because Jeremiah, I got an eyewitness, Cheryl Green, and hers is a wonderful story. She was rescued by a couple of Bigfoot. She was about to be by a couple of school kids when she was a girl in school, and these Sasquatch came out and started throwing stones at these boys and chased them off. And then for a while there, they would kind of follow her home from school in the tree line. And now wherever she goes, she'll kind of communicate with a different Sasquatch clan here or there. It's almost like, if you seek these things out, these things are going to seek you out. It's that old Mothman. If you've seen the Mothman Prophecies movie with Richard Gere, there's a saying in there that once these things know that that they're real, they make themselves known. they start showing themselves. And that might not be every case, but that's what it's been for me. Yeah, it's been crazy. But on the flip side, man, I don't want to paint a too dark a picture because it's been a ton of fun learning from the eyewitnesses. And this is a serious subject to the eyewitnesses. And yeah, right now we're starting our third season right now of filming. We're going to do a total of 5. That's all I know right now. And of course, we got the podcast show. And really, there's a lot of competition and a lot of saturation now with this subject. And I'm not interested in that. I'm really interested in bringing people together, kind of collecting the data. Because on a simple level, like I tell my boys, my one kid's like, Dad, you're just getting old and you want something to do when you retire. And it's no. When you go out in the woods, make sure you take somebody with you. When you go out in the woods, if you see one of these things, just move away because they're there. They're there.
Your story is there's parts of it that's very similar to mine where trying to think of how to say this. You are very much drawing a line in certain areas, but in other areas, you're going for it too. Mm-hmm. Which I think is important because I also have a Christian background as well. And
okay,
there are, I think as part of this, it's a thing where you start, it's almost like you become a beacon, right? Or something. And I'm not quite sure how it works, but it's like, you go out into areas where there's a lot of Bigfoot activity. And then after it, like, yeah, you're going to start to notice weird stuff happening around your place. Right. And you gotta be careful that sometimes you got to shut it down. Right.
Oh, exactly. You can't go crazy.
Yeah. It's a very, very interesting. There's no book to read that tells you, okay, here are the rules, but you got to be careful because it opens up stuff that is weird. And you're just in Michigan, right? It's weird.
Oh, without a doubt. And then now I got to go. I got to film an episode next June where a lady has a relationship with Dogman. So what do you do about that? There are multiple different creatures out there that we are now being exposed to. For me, it is about getting the word out there just for safety's sake, if anything. And 2, I don't want the big thing for me, when you have kids, I didn't want my boys like freaking out one day, like having an encounter and then losing their minds over it. Now I can say, all right, I don't care if you call me crazy. Here's what's happened in my life. So in the back of your mind, or like my dad used to say, just put it on the shelf so you're not overwhelmed if something ever does happen.
It will be interesting to see what happens after you do that Dogman focused one, because my personal belief is that there's nothing good at all with the whole Dogman thing.
Give it to me. What are they? Are they
I don't know.
Experiment? Give it to me for a second.
I don't know what they are, but I've never ever heard anyone that's like, oh yeah, like it was a great experience, and it's always been like a terrible, terrible, dark experience with these guys. Unless you've heard something else.
Okay. No. Well, Angie Elizabeth says there's the one that is friends with the Bigfoot, For Dogman sightings, real quick. So Sandusky, Michigan, I've got an account, a sighting just south of me. Adolescent. All right, so let's bring in this aspect. An adolescent, a smaller Dogman. So that brings into the whole breeding population question, males, females. So adolescent Bigfoot just south of me. Then last year, I'm talking within the last year. Carroll, Michigan, Dogman, standing in the middle of a church parking lot. One of the patrons of the church is cutting the lawn. They are making their lines. They're paying attention to the lines in the lawn. And they look up, and there is a Dogman standing in the parking lot, glaring at them. What do you do about that? That's a town where people are all around. I've been to the location.
I don't know. I don't know how to handle it, which is kind of why I've got my hands full with the whole Bigfoot thing. But you know, I had a specific Michigan question for you, and I'm just curious if you know, maybe you've already been out to this area, but have you been out to the area just north of, I guess it'd be on Google Maps, it's Huron Manistee National Forest, like around Marilla and Interlaken and all that?
No, we're not yet, but I'm sure we're going to get there. I've got 2 sightings. Well, Sherry Reduced sighting was just north of there.
Okay.
And then the other guy is at Bear Lake or something. Then there's another sighting by there. But I have not been there, but I have heard. Man, can you tell me one of the encounters off the top of your head?
I'll tell you this much. So if you want to hear some crazy stories, I talked to these two cool older gentlemen from around the area about their crazy Bigfoot adventures. But it is so active in that area that the town of Marilla, the name for the Bigfoot around the area is the Marilla Gorilla. Not even kidding, dude.
Oh,
yeah.
Backtrack. I'm writing this down.
Yeah.
So now I'm going to go investigate this.
You really, I mean, man, if you could even, I'll look up which particular episode it is, but man, these guys had some wild tales. Yeah. But Marilla Gorilla and just everyone. I mean, it's so crazy. It's like messing around with the garbage and back of the bar in one of the towns around there. Like, it's some crazy stuff. And you know, like Dogman is over there in Manistee National Forest as well.
Oh, you know what? Okay, I got it on the map right now. That is not too far, if I'm correct, from Barryton, Michigan. And there's another story there. One of my eyewitnesses, when she was a girl, there's a campground there. She got into a relationship with a young Sasquatch. Every summer, she'd go up there and would hang out with this young Sasquatch, and then she would throw steaks to the big alpha male who would stay just outside the camp. But that is so I've got Marilla on the map. Fantastic.
Yeah, it's episode 743 if you want to check it out.
743.
It's all about that area. You'll love it. But dude, man, you are getting to some wild stuff. I love how you are just going for it. And, you know, guys, if you haven't checked out the YouTube channel, I'll have the link again in the show notes so you can go directly there. But, you know, everyone needs to go there that's listening to this. Check it out. Subscribe.
The YouTube channel, Bigfoots of America.
Nice.
And the TV pilot show is Bigfoots of Michigan. So anyways.
Perfect. Well, man, Brian, it has been just, I'm glad we were able to have you back on and to get the whole story, which if you put it together, it's an incredible, I mean, it really, hopefully you're thinking about putting together a book one day at the end of all this. I mean, it would be a pretty cool story, but
I just started thinking about that. You know, I am I like the social media and then the films, but it's just what you just said. It needs to be more organized and laid out to me in a chronological order. And yes, so I do have a name for the book. I will write. I'm starting it, but I'm not going to complete it until we're done with this 5-year project. And then I'll compile all the information in a book. I just have the title for it. So anyways.
That's a super, super good idea. But man, thank you so much for coming on the show. Is there anything else that people would need to know about you that they can, you know, ways that they can reach out or other ways to follow you besides the YouTube channel?
Yeah, yeah. You can go to bigfootsofmichigan.com. So that's Bigfoots with an S of Michigan.com. If you want to get a hold of me, go to either bigfootsofmichigan@gmail.com or bigfootsofamerica@gmail.com. If you've got a sighting in Michigan and actually now anywhere in the nation, let me know. And we're planning on going to Oklahoma, maybe Alabama, North Carolina to do some out-of-state filming. So if you've had an encounter, contact me and we'll see what we can do. We'll take it from there.
That's fantastic, Brian. Definitely stay in touch. It'll be exciting to see what comes up next for you, but you are going down a pretty cool road, and you're going to have a lot of fun while you're doing it. That's for sure. So thanks again, man.
Thanks, Jeremiah, for letting me be on and share all this information.
Just wanted to take a minute to say thank you for listening to this episode of the Bigfoot Society podcast. Brian's account takes us far beyond the usual trail cams and tree knocks into the realm of interdimensional beings, mind speak, and the haunting idea that some of these creatures might know where you live. So huge thanks to Brian Sawyer for opening up about such personal and intense experiences and for reminding us that once you start looking into the mystery sometimes looks back. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to the channel on YouTube, hit the bell icon so you don't miss a thing, and share this one with a friend who's into Bigfoot, Michigan lore, or the paranormal side of Bigfoot. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, make sure you're following the show. If you'd leave a review, that goes a long way to help new listeners discover us. And hey, if you or someone you know has had a Bigfoot encounter, especially in Michigan or the Great Lakes area, I would love to hear about it. Please shoot me an email at bigfootsociety@gmail.com. And also, don't forget, Sasquatch Summerfest is coming up July 11th through the 12th at Green Waters Park in Oak Ridge, Oregon. Bigfoot Society listeners can grab a 2-day pass for the price of a 1-day admission with code BFS at checkout. Get your tickets now at www.sasquatchsummerfest.com. Thanks again for being part of the Bigfoot Society. Until next time, keep your eyes open, trust your gut, and never stop asking what else might be out there, and see you in the woods.